and site plans to the board and the public, and we will provide in just a moment some further information about the procedures for the matters that are on public hearing. We have a couple of preliminary announcements on two matters that are on our docket today. On page 2, case 2023-92. This is a request for property located at 1322 Little Hamilton Avenue for special exception to reduce the street setbacks. That case is going to be indefinitely deferred at this time. This case is located in District 17. They recently elected a new council member, and the parties are working together to select a date for the community meeting on that one. So they will renotice that case for a later agenda. And then on the last page, case 2023-116. This is a request for street setback variance for property located at 6011 Hill Circle. It's in Council District 20. The applicant has retained counsel. We were just notified of that recently. And staff would also like to suggest that this one might benefit from a referral to NDOT for a recommendation. If I could ask for a board member to consider making a motion to do that. Thank you. All right, we have a motion. Is it properly seconded?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you. So that one will be back on the next meeting. For anyone who may be here wishing to be heard on that case, it will be back on the agenda at the next meeting, which will be at this location at 1 p.m. on Thursday, October 19th, so 2 weeks from today. We also have a consent agenda that we would like to recommend to the board members. So we will read out to everyone who's present today. If there is a case that we announce that is being recommended to the board to be approved on consent, if you are a member of the public who wished to be heard in opposition to one of these cases, in other words, if there's one of these cases that you are a neighbor or community member that you didn't want to have approved and you wanted to be heard on this request, please raise your hand, let us know. We'll take it off the consent agenda and then we'll go ahead and hear it in its regular order for public hearing, okay? So at this time, I will read the cases that are being recommended to the board for approval, and likewise, the board members also have the opportunity, if any of the board members wish to hear any of the items that are being recommended for approval, you have the opportunity to ask us to remove it from the consent agenda prior to us taking a vote to approve the matters that will remain on the consent agenda. The first case that is on today's consent agenda is case 2023-78. This is a request by GSW Holdings and Stephen Griffith for property located at 6304 James Court. This is seeking a variance to reduce the street setback from 50 feet to 40 feet in the R8 UZO district. Is there anyone here who is wishing to speak in opposition to this request? Seeing no one, the next case that is recommended for consent today is case 2023-104. This is a request by Jackson LeBeau and Western Express, owner of property located at 517 and 525 Basswood Avenue, requesting an item D appeal in the R10 district in order to expand an existing parking lot. If approved, we would ask the board to consider, with the motion for approval, to require a condition that this obtain a stormwater grading permit for floodplain mitigation. We've spoken with the engineer for this project as well as Metro engineers, and our understanding is that clearly this would require a grading permit, and so this is just an extra assurance to make sure that something that already should happen doesn't fall through the cracks. The next case recommended for approval is 2023-13. This is a request. Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. So is anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to the request for 2023-104 to expand the parking lot at 517 Basswood, otherwise known as Rock Harbor Marine? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that will come off the consent.
Okay, next is case 2023-113. This is a request by W Family Real Estate Holdings, LLC, owner of property located at 2155 Sadler Avenue, requesting a variance from the street setback requirements in R6 zoning district in order to construct a new single-family home. Is there anyone here who is wishing to speak in opposition to this request at 2155 Sadler Avenue? I do not see anyone. Also recommended for consent is case 2023-114. This is a request by Chris Benditsky and Megan, owners of property located at 105 Lincoln Court, requesting a variance to increase the maximum height of a proposed accessory structure from 16 feet to 22.5 feet in the RS10 zoning district. Is there anyone here who is wishing to speak in opposition to that request? I do not see anyone. And finally, case 2023-115 is a request by Laura Gifford for property located at 1405 Jewel Street for an expansion of an existing nonconforming structure to expand the master bedroom and bath. Is there anyone here who is wishing to speak in opposition to that request? I don't see anyone. Were there any cases where board members asked for them to be withdrawn? And I will go through the consent agenda again for Ms. Karpanek, okay? So the cases that we are recommending for consent at this time are as follows. Case 2023-78, that's a street setback reduction at 6304 James Court. Case 2023-113, that's a request for a street setback reduction at 2155 Sadler Avenue. Case 2023-114, that's a request to increase the height of an accessory structure located at 105 Lincoln Court. Case 2023-115 is the last one. That's a request to expand a nonconforming structure at 1405 Jewel Street. Were there any requests to remove any of those items from the consent agenda at this time? If not, then we would ask the board to consider a motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor of putting those on the consent agenda? Okay, that passes.
Okay, thank you. So the cases that were on consent this afternoon have all been approved, and the order of approval will be sent to all the applicants in these matters so that you can go ahead and pursue the remainder of the items outstanding for your building permit. I do not see, thank you for, that was well put last time. Mr. Harkins pointed out, I am still getting used to new faces for the new council members. So it could be that there's a council member present that I have not met before. And so if that is the case, then please let us know at this time if there's a case you want to be heard on. I don't see anyone. So therefore, we're going to move forward with explaining the procedures for the cases that remain on the docket today, which will be for public hearing. So for each of these cases, if you're an applicant and when we start the call the docket and ask if there's anyone present wishing to be heard in opposition to your request, if members raise their hand and wish to be heard in opposition, then there will be 10 minutes allocated to each side to be able to present their cases. 10 minutes in aggregate. The applicant may reserve some of its time for a rebuttal period. So a portion of the 10 minutes presumably will be utilized by the applicant to present their case as to why they feel that the case that they've presented should be granted. Any members of the public wishing to be heard against the case would have 10 minutes together to be able to present any testimony opposing the request, and then any time reserved from the original 10 minutes could be used for rebuttal by the applicant to respond to any of the concerns raised by the community members. For cases where we call at the docket and the applicant comes forward, but there is no one present wishing to be heard in opposition to the request, then the applicant will have 5 minutes to make the presentation. There will be no opposition. After the 5 minutes, the board will deliberate the case. And if you're asked questions by the board members, it does not count against your time. The Metropolitan Code of Laws requires 4 affirmative votes to grant an application before the board today. And we wish to advise everyone that once a vote is taken on your application, any party who disagrees with the outcome may request a rehearing within 60 days. Parties may also appeal a decision to the Davidson County Chancery Court by filing a writ of certiorari within 60 days. All parties are encouraged to seek independent legal counsel before filing an appeal to ensure that all deadlines and procedures are followed. I believe that concludes the preliminary announcements from staff, and at this time I will turn it over to the zoning administrator and Metro Legal for some further information regarding the first case on our docket.
So we're going to break for a very brief executive session. So just take about 5 minutes before we address the rest of the agenda.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the board will be in recess for 5 minutes. We'll return and resume. sounds like he's making his way in, so once he's seated, I'll go ahead and.
I kind of read it quickly.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the board is now back in session for its meeting of October the 5th, 2023. I'm Joey Hargis, the Metro Zoning Administrator. Before we took a break, the board went into executive session to discuss litigation. But I do want to make an announcement on case 2023-20. This case, and I'll read the caption, Mr. Adam Lefevre is the representative of Seven Hills Club Incorporated, the appellant and owner of the property at 1313 Hildreth Drive. Upon remand from the Davidson County Chancery Court of an order entered by the board upon public hearing at its March 2nd, 2023 meeting, in which this board denied Mr. Lefevre's appeal of my interpretation of the zoning code as regards to the applicability of a special exception requirement for the applicant to obtain this board's approval before obtaining a building permit. The case was remanded back, the hearing was held at the Chancery Court. The case was remanded back to this board for further hearing. Part of our duty in that direction by the court was to dig into the record and find more information as regards to the prior actions of both the county and the city boards of zoning appeals in 1960 and 61. And a big thanks to Ms. Waits on her research and finding most of that information. Based upon that information that was brought to light, I have since changed my decision as far as whether or not the protections of 137208, which is the section of state code that governs non-conforming uses. The Seven Hills Club is a non-conforming use in that zoning code. Are there any parties present today who had come today to wish to speak to address the board in case 20 besides the appellant or myself? Okay. I'll be happy to talk with you sidebar once this part's over. But the reason I asked that question, this case will not be heard by the board. The case pending before this board is now moot. I am in agreement with the applicant that 137208 of the state code applies, and they are entitled under zoning law to obtain a building permit for the bubble which they are proposing. I have drafted, and I'll be happy to give you a copy of the memorandum that backs my decision to that, and as well as discuss appeal possibilities for you should you wish to lay those. But long story short is that I am in agreement that the state law does protect the business out there, and they are allowed to expand. They are required to obtain a building permit. This is not to say that they can just go build it. They do have to obtain a building permit, obtain all the other approvals within the building permit process, building code, fire marshal, stormwater, whatever else is in there. But from a zoning perspective, their line item sign off will be approved by me with that. With that, case 20 on our agenda will not be heard as that case is now moot. So I wanted to make that announcement, Elizabeth. I'll turn it back over to you. I'll talk with this lady here about, as far as next steps. So thank y'all.
All right, then I believe, yes, we have all of our members present, and we're ready to move through our remaining items that are on public hearing today. This case, 2023-103, is a request by Entrust Investments and OIC Homes at 138 Harris Street, requesting a variance to reduce the driveway width from 24 feet to 20. Property is zoned OR 20. I spoke with our members in the audience today just to try to get a feel for which cases had opposition. I believe that no one's here wishing to speak against that one, but want to make sure that information is correct. So at this time, the applicant, if you would please come forward. You'll have 5 minutes to make your presentation before the board today. Please, sit at the table, and then there's a button that looks a little bit like a person icon. When you push it, the red light should come on. And if you'll please state your name and address for the record when you get started.
My name is Ben DeBose, and my address is 6707 Highway 100. My personal address. Is that what we're...
I hate to interrupt you, but actually I forgot to show some maps, and pictures to our board, so I will do that really quickly if you don't mind. I apologize. So this is the zoning map of this area. It's OR 20, and this property is located, just as you can see, a few parcels down from Gallatin Road in Madison. So the property is shown on this aerial view with a little red sort of icon above it, and then you'll see some more density and commercial spaces down along Gallatin and also on the adjacent blocks. This is what the lot looks like today. At the top, you'll be able to see a view from the street at this property facing Gallatin, just to kind of get a sense of some of what the commercial development there along that block looks like, and then the site plan is. Pardon me, please continue.
So, and do I just go with our request now? I got my address and name and everything. Okay. So we're requesting the driveway width be changed from 24 to 20 feet wide. That would still allow for two-way, a fire truck to come in and out of the driveway, and but allows us to fit the 4 townhomes that we've designed. I'm seeing now that this site plan shows 18 feet wide, but that's a prior site plan. We have a 20-foot wide site plan, and I apologize if I sent the wrong one.
My notes reflect 20, so I'm not sure. I think that must have been contained in the building permit application, so apologies if we didn't pull the right site plan for the application. I'm not sure about that inconsistency.
So yeah, the request is just to narrow the driveway width. The justification is that we can still get the two-way traffic in for the fire truck, meet fire marshal's requirements, and it allows for these beautiful townhomes that we've designed. Whereas if we don't get the width, then we have to build like a rectangular building at the rear of the lot. Just looks like a quadplex, and so that's the request.
And it's a very narrow lot. Is that correct?
It's 50 feet wide, yes, sir.
And that's your hardship that you're claiming, the narrowness?
It's the narrowness, yes, sir.
Do you have any information from either the fire marshal, NDOT, or anybody else stating that 20-foot width still is accommodating for egress for fire trucks? And
That was what my engineer at Catalyst Design Group said, that when he spoke to the fire marshal, but I don't have that personally in writing. That
More questions? It looks like the adjoining lot, we can put the viewer back up. I think there are on that side of the street, most of the lots are 50 feet. I see several across the street that are 175, and one that's 75. That's accurate, I suppose.
yes, sir. I believe that's accurate, yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions from the applicant?
I have just a couple more. I mean, is the updated site plan essentially what we're seeing here, albeit 20 feet wide at its smallest point?
That's correct. It's and the 2 feet are going to be closer in, like, towards the houses to allow for the landscaping buffer to still be there.
Okay, so its widest point will still be 25?
Yes, it'll still have 25 feet wide turnouts out of the garages that we have.
And I'm assuming that other areas on the other side are accommodating parallel parking, or is that an area that allows for people backing up in and out?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Opposite, so on your property line, you have these, it looks like an area that where a car could parallel park. My concern is that you're going to have people parking and it's going to constrict the width more.
I see what you're saying. I know what you're talking about. Those are not for parking. Those are for being able to turn out of the garage and meet the turning radius requirements. Those will not be designated parking spots.
Okay. And is your curb cut 24 feet or 25 feet?
I think it's I'd have to, I don't recall. I
I
can,
didn't see a sidewalk there, it doesn't look like.
no, sir.
I mean, 20 feet's not a lot, and then you have potentially cars there. I mean, I don't, these are two-car garages, right?
Yes, sir, 2-car garages.
Okay, if nobody has any questions from the applicant, we'll close the public hearing and discuss. So, thank you, we're gonna close the public hearing and discuss. You might wanna stay up here just in case we reopen it to ask questions, which we do sometimes. So,
Mainly me.
Stay like here or just?
that'd be fine, or just be ready in the event we call you. I don't know that we'll reopen it or not, but sometimes we do, so.
I mean, I've no issue, with the request, I mean, 4 residences are permitted based upon the zoning, and, it's when these parcels, I imagine, were set up, or when they were platted at 50 feet, I don't know that that was what the zoning that was in effect at the time when that happened, so, a 24-foot driveway is almost half the width of the property. I think Mr. Ransom raised a really good point about, ensuring fire marshal compliance. So, I mean, I think I'm of the opinion that, to approve the variance, so long as it is approved, it's approved by the fire marshal.
It has
On
to
the
be,
condition, yeah.
that's a whole separate layer from
Yeah,
us.
so,
That's
Yeah.
kind of where I was
But-
going.
but, as long as we are able to count on that being something that everyone's comfortable with, and, I'm comfortable with the request.
Yeah, I would, that's exactly where I was going with it. I mean, it's interesting. I think if you provided 4 more feet to meet the requirement, it might provide enough room for cars to actually park where I'm worried about them parking where they may not actually be able to park here, which would kind of solve the issue, but it's a decision's out of my hands. If you had a document or something that said that, I think, so making it approved contingent upon fire marshal.
Yeah, and I don't
signing
even
off
know
on
if we
it
need
would
to
be
put the
fine.
condition on there for that to be the case.
Yeah,
So-
we don't need to, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a whole, council can correct me, but that's a whole, they have to separately approve this, just as stormwater does, just as.
Yes, I
Yeah.
believe so,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a given.
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Got it. I'll make a motion that we approve the variance as requested, to reduce the driveway width from 24 to 20 feet based upon, the applicant's demonstration of the narrowness of the lot, based upon the, permitted, construction of 4 residences on the property.
I'll second it. So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, being none, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0. Thank you.
All right, next we're going to hear case 2023-110. This is a request that was filed by Greg Cummings. Oh, I need to unhide my slides for Basswood. Pardon me, let me take a quick technical detour. Rather than finding the right buttons.
While she's doing that, could you brief us on the item D? This is not a special exception, this is a variance request, correct? Or is this a,
So item D,
That's 104,
Item
right?
D, right, you're thinking, so these are changes to non-conforming uses or structures.
okay,
And so the board determines the appropriateness of a proposed change to a non-conforming use or structure.
right, and what's our standard on those as long as it doesn't
Hold on. Give me a minute to type the code.
It is, I think it's like substantially increase the non-conforming use or something like that.
If I can talk to you, because I spent a lot of
Yeah,
time
'cause I
looking
was-
on this one,
Okay.
because they don't have a lot of criteria to go on, but basically, that's the reason why I put it on consent, there's like no. So basically, like, when you look at, okay, non-conforming uses.
Yeah.
Okay, land with minor improvements, it says that. Then, under change of non-conforming use, I'm sorry, Joey, I've made a mess. Okay, it's alteration. Yeah, it's alteration, section D, it just says BZA. That's it,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, FAR,
Yeah.
mechanics, and
There's-
did you tell me that y'all don't count parking lots toward FAR, so?
Okay, yeah, those were the.
It's not,
Is this your?
Elizabeth, you can just read that out, or I will.
Okay, sure.
Elizabeth has that in front of her, so I'll let you read that.
All right, the standard for this case, which is going to be case 2023-104, it's a request for a nonconforming use expansion to extend an existing parking lot located at 517 Basswood. 525 Basswood is not actually on the application, however, it is the owner of the adjacent parcel which utilizes the parking lot, which is on the 517 parcel. And 525 Basswood is known as Rock Harbor Marine. The standards that the board would consider in determining whether or not to approve this case would be 1740-650D, alteration of a structure containing a nonconforming use for any use not otherwise protected by TCA 137208, which was a statute that you all have reviewed recently. Alterations other than incidental shall be permitted only through the issuance of a permit by the Board of Zoning Appeals, but the floor area ratio of the expanded use, together with all other uses on the lot, shall not exceed maximum floor area ratio currently permitted in the base zoning district. We've already established by staff that because this is a parking lot, it's not going to intrude on the floor area ratio. So normally your analysis would require something that doesn't apply because this is not that kind of a structure.
Right, because it's not a structure at all, really. So does that mean that it just per se doesn't increase the non-conforming use? Is that, because I'm trying to get my arms around the standard, and my expectation is that,
But your standard is in the powers of the board, item D, that you shall determine the appropriateness of proposed changes to non-conforming uses and structures.
it's that broad, okay.
It's that broad.
It's not that, it's not as narrow as if it doesn't substantially increase the non-conforming use, it's much broader
Right.
than that. Okay.
That's correct.
And you're
So
still.
can you say that again? What was that? It's
It's 1740-180D.
Okay. And that is,
Powers of the Board of Zoning Appeals, letter D says changes to non-conforming uses or structures. The board shall determine the appropriateness of proposed changes to non-conforming uses or structures. And the part Elizabeth just read discussed FAR, but there's no structure there's no building being built here, so FAR is not an issue.
so, and I get that, so we have to consider whether it's appropriate, but if it were a structure, then our standard would be more objective, it would be
I think your standard would be the same.
the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'd be the same. Now, you could allow, and this board is unique in that in Tennessee, to be honest with you, to allow changes to increase the degree of nonconformity, but you've just got to determine whether it's appropriate.
Okay. Thank y'all. Thank you for
And
that.
just to
Yeah.
clarify a little further, or maybe not, you are still allowed to impose conditions under 174270.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, we will review our presentation at this time before we hear from members of the public. This is the zoning for this parcel, which is in a R10 zoning district. And that's the marina, which is the adjacent property. So here I'd be standing on the parking lot, taking a photo of the marina. This is the parking lot as it exists today. This was some other parking space. Since I didn't have a survey with me or the ability to ascertain which parts of the parking lot are on the 525 and the 517, but this is the existing parking options that they have at the space. This is the site plan. You can see sort of down to the left what their parking lot expansion looks like, and I think I've got some bigger slides. This is a blown up view of the area, so it's hard to see because it's currently a very wooded lot, but down below would be Sandy Creek, which is a watershed there going into the river in West Nashville. And so it does traverse the lot into sort of two different sections. So this is the section on this view. It's going to be more to the top right, and then you can see the creek and the stormwater buffer areas. They're located there on the property. And let me see if we have another slide which shows that same site plan down below, and then I tried to superimpose sort of the general area of where this might look like upon what it looks like today. And then this was also a map of the 100-year floodplain, so the whole property in this area is located within that floodplain. Is there anyone here? I think we have someone here wishing to speak in opposition to the request, and so at this time, you may begin your presentation, and then I can let you know when you've got a couple minutes left in the event that you would wish to reserve some of that time for a rebuttal. Please state your name and your address when you get started.
Thank you. My name is Yates Bateman. I'm with Fulmer Lucas Engineering. We're at 2002 Richard Jones Road. I'm here on behalf of the property owner of 517, as she mentioned, the end user of 525 Basswood to the north is looking to expand the non-conforming use of this parking lot to increase parking on the 517 Basswood Avenue property. I think as y'all discussed, this is an item D, appeal to expand the non-conforming use for the marina's future use. Half of the marina property is currently zoned industrial and half of it is zoned R10 residential. So that's where the non-conforming use comes from, parking lot within the residential property. The existing parking lot has been in use on the property in service of the marina as far back as we can go on aerials. The proposed parking lot will meet all code requirements and does not require any storm or grading variances to be constructed. I believe earlier she mentioned that y'all would likely place a condition for a grading permit approval, which we'll absolutely need to seek to be able to construct this. So no concerns there. In addition, we're providing a 20-foot wide landscape buffer between our parking lot and the residential properties to the east that do front on Basswood. We took that as a typical buffer between commercial and a residential use to ensure that we meet both of those, even though technically the zoning is both residential for those two uses. The final item I'd like to note is that we have 3 of the 6 homes immediately to our east. We have letters of recommendation from those property owners. I believe that's all I have. Happy to answer questions or anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, doesn't look like there are any. We'll close. Well, we're not closing, but we'll hear from the opposition. You have almost 8 you wanted.
I have lived at 600 Basswood Ave, directly across the street from the marina, for 30 years. I've adopted the street. I am the Metro Beautification and Environmental commissioner. I'm looking out for the residents of the street. The commercial parking lot that's located at 517 Basswood is on R10 property and was never legal as a commercial enterprise and is not permitted on residential property. The parking lot is not for the benefit of 517 Basswood and has been leased to 525 Basswood.
And so tell me the difference between those.
He was speaking for 517 Basswood, which is the property next to the marina that actually owns the property now, and it is going into a land swap. 517 needs the mouth of the creek, so they're swapping with the marina the mouth of Sandy Creek for this extra parking area.
I thought the park, so you're saying this expansion is not for the benefit of the marina?
It's for the benefit of the marina, but it's not the current owner.
Okay.
So the parking lot is not for the benefit of 517 Basswood, the current owner, and has been leased to 525 Basswood. Therefore, there is no legal non-conforming use under state statute 137208, and an expansion should not be allowed. Furthermore, there is no provision for expansion at a non-conforming activity that wasn't affected by a previous zoning change that made the activity non-conforming. Section E of the statute says that expansion may not occur through the acquisition of additional land. According to the land use table of all the exceptions, I don't see anything that would allow for the commercial parking lot on residential. I support a lot of ideas of what's going on with the marina, but it really should be over in the corner of their property at Robertson and Basswood. That's where it would fit in better. Our neighborhood is maintenance, according to Nashville Next. We are not evolving. We are not business. We are all residential. So if they want to do it, they need to put it over by Robertson, where a lot of the zoning is going to be changing into more of a mixed use. I also lived in that house during 2010 during the flood. That flood came up into my yard. I was the next one to go under. More pavement, if you're going to agree to it, should really be permeable. It's added covered land that you can see that huge space that was permeable. And so that scares me to death, especially with 517, what it's been approved with all of the cement that they've put in, that 21,000 square foot home. This is turning into something in floodplain. It's all floodplain. Floodplain goes up to the corner of my property. We're affecting what's going to affect my house. And that's what I live with. So I've watched that exact land flood many times in my 30 years. And in 2010, it was up into my yard, and I was scared to death. They've been bringing in lots of fill into 2017. And, all right, well, anyways, it's not fair to me as a property owner, so I'll turn over to him.
Hi, Alex Craw, 610 Basswood Avenue. I've owned 2 properties on Basswood Avenue. Sarah is there if you're looking at that picture. The village, they're there at the corner of Edsel and Basswood Drive. So when she was talking about the water coming up to her yard, it really did pretty much follow that flood map. I think that's why it was redrawn the way that it was. But I bought in 2013, and I actually have another property a little bit further across the street. And like Sarah, I am very excited about most of some proposed changes and improvements by the new ownership at the marina. But I also have to keep in mind that I live there, and this is going to affect the residents, most of which have lived there for a while. My concerns mirror Sarah's with, the entire 2 acres that they're going to take as a parking lot is mature trees, and it is, has been that way for a very long time. And we know it's going to be nice to have a 20-foot buffer, but 2 acres of trees for parking is a hard pill to swallow, especially when it's so close to the stream. And looking at the site plan, I actually think the that different floodway buffers and zone 1 and 2 buffers would apply rather than those stream buffers, since it's a named stream, but that's not a BZA issue, that's a stormwater issue. So those are some of my concerns in talking with some of the, not really knowing about this until going to a few neighborhood meetings and figuring out about the land swap. And it's just been, we've just gotten a lot of different information. At first it was a lack of information, and now it's different information. And we're concerned that this parking area is going to service, other elements of this project down the road that we just don't know the details of. There's been mention of, mass apartments. There's been mention of a lot of different things. And since we know who's going to be using this parking area, the marina and the expansion of the marina, we just feel like as residents and neighbors that we need to find out some more details first before they, approve this to approve the next thing to approve the next thing. And like Sarah mentioned, this was all R10, has been zoned residentially, just like those six units that were built there in the last 5 years. The flood zone pretty much stops right at the drop off of their homes, and I'm concerned for them of any removal that would increase the water. And I wasn't here for the 2010 flood, but have seen the existing parking lot, flood several feet on multiple occasions. So those are my main concerns on what this non-conforming use could really lead to. And thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, no questions. Thank you very much. The applicant has some more time. Before you get started, let me ask, is your next step stormwater, if you obtain this variance, is your next step to get you don't have stormwater approval yet?
Correct, we do not. We would, have to go through that
You
full
gotta go through
process.
that, right, okay.
So I think only thing to add is that we're, certainly understand the floodplain. We know the concerns. Anything that would get approved here through Metro Water would have to comply with all the current standards. Whether that be low impact development or permeable pavement, we would absolutely be required to meet all of Metro Water's stormwater requirements, as well as the buffer. I believe we've drawn the buffer correctly, but if Metro Water disagreed, then we would have to comply with that grading permit.
Okay.
That's all I have.
For the applicant.
So you're going to clear cut it basically down. Trees are going.
Sorry, what was that?
You're going to clear cut a lot of the trees that are presently there.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To the limits of the parking lot and no more.
I know you might have said this earlier, and I was trying to connect the dots again, because the parcels of land, 517, which this sits on, and then there's 525, and I guess I was getting a little confused in the ownership and where you sat into it. Maybe she confused me on the previous part.
Yeah. So the parking lot is on 517 Basswood, which is the southern fully residential property. The marina is 525 Basswood, which is to the north. That is the marina, the actual water up there. And I think what might be confusing is a majority of the 525 Basswood Marina property is IWD. You see the black squiggly line going through there. That's actually the zoning line. So a portion of that property is R10.
Got it.
But it is a separate property.
It looks like half of the parking is on 525 and in some R10 as it is now, and then the other half of the parking lot is on 517, which is R10.
Yes, correct.
Joey, is this a, grandfather status can expand the current use type of situation here, or is this something that's a little bit
It
different?
is, no, the BZA in the research, the BZA in the 70s granted this back then, that board granted use variances, which they can't do anymore. You guys can't grant use variances, but a use variance was granted in this zone district to permit that parking lot. So that's under how they can expand. They have to come here to seek that expansion under the section we read earlier.
Okay.
The alternative is we invoke the state statute and they get to do it anyway. So I'm not quite sure that we reached that as we reached in the prior case that I announced.
That's why.
Yeah, it's a little bit different here in this case. I don't have a structure. I don't have anything. I mean, our code calls this a structure by definition, a definition that will soon be rewritten. Because clearly a parking lot is not a building, so.
Well, it could be if it's multi-story.
Former Justice Koch called it a structure back under Western Express. He and I still.
Okay, so any more questions from the applicant?
What's the intention for the new parking? Why do you need the more parking?
To support the expanded use of the marina to the north.
Are you putting in more slips, or you just need more parking for the slips that you have there now?
I believe the intent is to add more slips.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you very much.
But you don't know that that's the intent.
I believe that, yes, that is the intent.
That is the intent,
I
is
don't-
to add.
I don't know the timing on that, though.
Any further questions? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and discuss. Well, I will say, I totally get the neighbors concerned about stormwater, and we hear that quite a bit from people in development, and that's the last thing that speaking for myself, the last thing I know about is stormwater issues. So, and I think you heard the applicant say that, and that's not really our lane. They would have to get approval from stormwater, and the buffer would have to be, and, stormwater may make them put in a permeable surface. I would think likely. But I don't think it's not that we're shirking our duty. Our duty just isn't to evaluate stormwater issues, and we're just not capable. And always rest assured that that's going to be taken care of by another, branch. And so,
You also asked about what is being used for the parking, but they want to put in a 6 to 8 story apartment building.
ma'am, we hadn't opened back up the public hearing, so I
Mr. Chairman,
appreciate what you have to say, but I can't.
Yeah. As it relates to permeable pavers, you could require that as a condition of this
require
permit. Absolutely.
Okay. well,
Absolutely you could. Landscaping, whatever you think is appropriate,
Can you remind me what the standard is?
So for conditions, right, and this would seem to fall under that, right? You can impose conditions, restrictions, or time limits considered necessary to protect surrounding properties and better carry out the general intent of this title.
Okay.
So the other thing that came to mind is, I think this is important access to the Cumberland River, which a lot of people want to get on, and it's, I think that's something that I think is probably important, that if you've got people that want to go boating and get out on the river, there's limited places to do that around Nashville, and that the parking would help with that. So I also don't know if it is floodplain. I don't know that there can ever be any development in it other than a parking lot. So
There's in this particular area, there's some buffers off the stream,
right.
but it doesn't show according to the FEMA map that particular area, at least from the map I looked at, this particular area was floodplain. I mean, there's been a publicized plan on 525 to completely redo the marina from the ground up. Dallas-based developer bought it. So it feels like this is part of it. I don't know why they wouldn't come do it all at once.
Financing, maybe.
Yeah, I'm concerned though about, I understand stormwater, we don't regulate or control stormwater, but we do consider impacts on surrounding and neighboring parcels. And, I know that just because stormwater signs off or blesses something, that doesn't mean they can bless something and there's still an impact on neighboring property with respect to either increased hazard and environmental impacts as well. I've got some reservations here.
Joey, what was the statute again on the 70s? I'm sorry to ask you to repeat it again, but you said it was a,
The BZA granted a use variance to permit this parking lot in the R10 district back in middle 70s. Because when they first came to me, I'm like, you can't do this at all. It's not zoned for it. But so how it ends up in your lap is it's a non-conforming use on this parcel. So
Yeah.
they're permitted to expand that non-conforming use under section 1740 180D of your
because
powers.
that use variance the line wasn't necessarily drawn at where they built the lot. It applies to the whole lot.
To the parcel at the time.
To the parcel.
So in this instance, we've had a subdivision of that parcel. It's not, to the lady's point, they didn't acquire additional land. This is the same dirt that's there. The lot configurations are different, but they couldn't go buy an adjoining parcel and expand into that.
So, what you're saying is by a variance that this board granted 50 years ago, they have the ability to continue to expand the parking lot into a larger parking lot, right?
With this board's approval, yes, sir.
Yeah,
With this
but we have the ability to determine the appropriateness of the changes to the proposed non-conforming use.
And
So
when-
it's
yes.
not just a
it's
blank
not the-
check.
You couldn't say, hey, the existing parking, go tear it up and get rid of it. You don't have that authority. What's there is there.
Mhm.
But they have to seek this board's approval to expand, and then you can, if you agree, like, well, this is appropriate, then you can place whatever reasonable conditions on it that protects.
And it's not, but it doesn't involve the grandfathering statute because there
No.
hasn't been a change in zoning that would affect it. So the zoning is the same, but it's just, it's a use that was permitted as non-conforming and it continues to be non-conforming.
Right.
And you cannot get a use variance any longer.
My concern is, there's going to be, the whole marina is going to be redeveloped. And there's a lot of residential neighborhoods or houses in and around this stream buffer, what have you. There's not going to be a lot of green space left over. You could say what you want about permeable pavers. I know this is not a board that's specific to stormwater, but they don't really work after a long time. So I have reservations on it. The size of it and how close it is to some of the areas. And I know it's kind of cart ahead of the horse, but it would have been helpful to see some type of a stormwater management plan or something that would account for not only this expansion, but for all the other stuff that's there, since flooding and all the other stuff's an issue. I know that maybe the applicant doesn't want to expend the money, time, and resources to do that, but I think that would have been helpful.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to deny the application.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? So your application is not granted.
I understand why they. I don't know.
Next case is 2023-110. This is an application filed by Greg Cummings on behalf of the owner, which is Summit Builders Corporation, for property located at 1402 South Street, seeking a variance and a street setback requirement in order to establish a new driveway. This is the zoning map of this area, R6A. There is an alley to the rear, and they have established the existing property, which has one single-family home, to be converted into an HPR, construct a new home to the rear. It's the aerial view. here of this block. And then try to zoom in so you could see what this specific block face appears like. From this aerial view, you can see that there are some other existing driveways on this block. That's not the case with every block along South, but for instance, you can see one there on the left, so it wouldn't be isolated if approved. This is what the property looks like from the front. So this is the existing structure. This is the rear of the structure, and presumably where another residential structure is going to be constructed. This house sits one lot over from the corner, so there's a cross street here. And then if you go down that cross street back toward the alley in the rear of the property, you can see Midtown there. So that's, or I'm sorry, that's not Midtown, it's the Gulch. This is directly off at 12th Avenue, so that's the Gulch. This is what the properties look like on the other side of the alley. So that area actually, it looked to me this was zoned for neighborhood evolving on that side, whereas this property sits really at the end of the community character information that we provided regarding the neighborhood maintenance. And so that was the map that we retrieved looking at that information. And this is a street view from the other side of the house, so confirming that there's a driveway here at this home, and then it's hard to see from the picture, but toward the end on the right, there was another house closer to the subject parcel that also has a front-facing driveway, and then here you'll see the site plan where they're proposing to construct this driveway. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to this request today? I do not see anyone, and so you all will have 5 minutes to make your presentation, please.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, we are here to try to get
State your full name.
Oh,
for
I
the record
apologize.
address.
Benton Smith, and I'm with Woods and Smith. We're on 1114th, 17th Avenue South. As I mentioned, we are here to try to get a variance to build a driveway on for Unit A to access in the front, connected to South Street. The reasoning for this is, as you can see, there is going to be a unit built behind there, and while this unit is being built, the resident of Unit A will not have access to the alley or access through the alley to get to his residence. And the driveway is to prevent having street parking. I know that there have been some emails from people in the area talking about the trees. The only tree that's going to be cut down is a juvenile tree, which we can replace. And also, I just wanted to point out, Greg Cummings actually is the owner and resident of Unit A. So, it's not like he's just going to build this and leave. He actually, will be living there and have to live, with this driveway there.
Jeremiah Jaskolski here with Summit Builders Corp., 319 Hickerson Drive, Suite A, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. We bought this lot in the back, and Greg came to us, and he just, he's kind of been, worried about accessing his property. And so we went back and forth a little bit, and we came to agreement that we'll put him in the driveway up front. So, we see there's a couple other driveways on the street, and we just feel like this is going to be better synergy for the property. He has full, uninterrupted access to his property. And that's all we're trying to do is, give the man ability to access the property easily.
I just want to reiterate, like Jeremiah just mentioned, there are, if you're facing the house, the two houses to the left of the house both have driveways that connect to South Street as well.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, there was a correspondence from the council member that references removal of a sidewalk and a curb cut and removal of a tree canopy. Can you speak to those issues?
As I mentioned, the only tree that will be removed is a rather small tree. I know there is kind of a tree canopy that goes along the side, but none of those trees will be, that's the only tree right there. And as I mentioned, we can replace that tree on the other side, or we could even put the driveway in on the other side and leave that tree there. So I mean, if we have to tear down that tree, we will put a new one, or if they don't want that tree torn down, we could go to the other side where there is no trees. When it comes to the curb cut, and I might be wrong on this, but it's going to be, slanted in. It's not going to be just a stop.
Yeah, we will comply with all public works requirements as far as that goes. As the curb cut.
I've got one question. You mentioned there's some other driveways on
Yes, sir.
South Street. But all those driveways, from what I've looked at, could go to a detached garage that's in the back of the property. In this situation, the driveway's in the front, which means the cars will rest in the front, parking will rest in the front, where all the other ones, cars go in the rear. Is there any other one that has a driveway that stops in the front? Or would this be the only one on South Street?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'd have to, look at the map again just to kind of check out. That is a good question, but as I mentioned, even if it doesn't go into the back, he's going to be parking on the street probably. So, I mean, he's going to have his car up front, either if the driveway is built or if, he doesn't have access to a driveway and he's having to park in front of the house.
Is there street parking on South Street?
Look like it.
I believe so.
Yes, there's.
Yeah, that looks like a residential permit.
Yeah, it's got a median in the middle with some big trees.
Actually, I was parked there. I don't think it's permit.
Okay, yeah, there's a sign there that says, it looks like there's a residential permit sign right in front of that one house, but.
Oh, you're right. They put the sign somewhere where no one would be parking in front of it, so I didn't even know it.
I mean, my only concern is changing the streetscape a little bit. Most of the other driveways go parallel to the house or go behind them. And this one, would essentially be like a miniature parking lot in the front of the house. And I understand why applicant wants to do it. I'm just wondering if there's another way to.
Are you done asking questions? I'll close the public hearing, we can discuss. Are you directing a question to them?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I thought you might be asking one.
Yeah, so.
You were aiming in that direction.
Sorry. So with that, I guess, has there been any thought given to maybe providing access or maybe putting a driveway on the right side of the existing residence? Can't tell if there's enough room there for that or not.
Oh, as I mentioned, yeah, we could definitely put it on the right or the left side. That's not our concern. We just, aren't able to do it under the current zoning requirements.
Okay.
You referenced that there's one immature tree that, if we were to take what you guys were wanting, would have to be removed because it's right smack dab in the middle of where you're going to build.
Yes, sir.
But you would be willing to put other trees to replace it, same size.
Absolutely.
As long as it's not a hackberry, I think I've got that reputation, but there would be several that you could put there at whatever.
Absolutely.
requirement.
Yeah, obviously, we do not want to, take trees away without putting trees back.
But that would run into if you were putting the driveway or having something to where they go around to the back, as my fine seatmate over here was referencing, you would not be able to do that and put the trees on that side, correct?
Not on the left.
or if we were looking at the
On the
house,
right.
not on the left, but you
Be
would
on
be
the
able
right.
to on the right, yes, sir.
Is the property already a horizontal property, Regine?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the owner of what's called on our plan, the existing residence, when did they purchase the property?
I'm not sure, but it's been a while. They've been there for a while.
And you purchased the property behind
Yes, ma'am.
recently?
About about a year ago.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And the current condition is they now are able, the existing residents, they're able to pull off the alley into a driveway, a gravel drive that I see? And
Yes,
park
ma'am.
off there?
So let me get, you purchased the back part of the HPR?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what's the hardship here, council? What's unique about this lot, or?
Like I said, I mean, it's essentially, we don't want to, cut access off from the current resident in Unit A. And especially during the building, as you know, there's going to be things blocking areas and people moving in and out. And we just want him to have, access to his residence, or unimpeded
In the rear
access.
Is the rear residence is what you're talking about?
The front residence is what he's trying, or what we're trying to not impede access to.
That's what you're gonna be building?
The rear residence, yes, is what's going to be built, yes, sir.
Okay, any more questions? All right, well, so we'll close the public hearing and discuss. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
I'll go. Not a,
Live mic, and you're looking around, so.
right, I mean, not, I don't, maybe I missed it, but I don't see any letters of support from associated neighbors, and some of these mentioned my worry as well, that it essentially, it's less a driveway and more a parking pad. I have less of a concern about the curb cut. It's if they were able to get that driveway to the side of the residence to where it offers a parking area where you don't have cars in the front of the yard, which doesn't seem.
It's not wide enough, is it?
No, it's not wide enough. It's not wide enough to do that. I'm just saying my concern is less with the curb cut and more the fact that it's a parking pad in the front. So it would be a driveway if it continued on to the back.
It's 1402, can you shrink it?
Yeah.
That's
So-
kind of what it's looking like.
What was that, Tom?
Can you shrink it down?
Does this,
Right.
this requires, I mean, there's a variance in the street setback for the construction of a driveway, so it requires demonstration of a hardship, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't really hear or see one.
You heard the magic question and there wasn't the response.
Well, I mean, I try to like look for these, but to me, the hardship is, well, it's turning off and parking in the front rather than parking on the street, but it doesn't really relate to the lot size or shape or the things that we would ordinarily consider when determining this. And it's based upon the impediment of access for the construction of the new residence in the back, and not because it's a narrow parcel or because it's, shaped like a triangle, or it does something that's odd, or it's the topography is really steep and sloping and you have to, so that's ordinarily the kind of stuff that I'd be looking for, and I've tried and I don't see it.
Can I open this back up to ask them? a
Sure.
question?
Any objection? No objection. Go ahead, yeah.
You mentioned, so you purchased just the lot in the rear, correct?
Yes, sir.
And was there, it doesn't sound like there was, I didn't see anything in it, but there was no easement or anything in that said that whoever owns that rear lot needs to provide means of egress to the rear alley? Nothing?
No, sir.
Covenant or anything on it?
What'd you say again, sir? I'm sorry.
Just if there was any easement or anything that was on the lot that you purchased that would force the owner, which is now you, to have access to the rear alley for that front property.
Well, with the zoning, both houses are supposed to access through the rear alley.
Right.
Okay, so basically, Greg, the front house's, problem is, when we start bringing in lumber, we start putting the dumpsters out there and we get to going, we get to building, he ain't gonna be able to access the property. He ain't gonna be able to pull back up there, so that's why I said, all right, Greg, why don't we just put your driveway up front? Would that make you happy?
Right.
He said, yes, sir. So I said, okay, I agreed to put him in the driveway. And then when I went to go to Coles to get it permitted, they said, whoa, hold up, you can't have a driveway and in the front. You got access through the back. So that's, and they told me, come here to ask for a variance, and you could probably get it since you already got driveways on that street.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, all I'm trying to do is help a man out here.
No, I
Get to his
understand.
property.
I'm a builder too. I get it in urban development. So I guess for clarification, it sounds like there's two things going on. One, you're worried about his ability to access his house during the course of construction.
Yes, sir.
And then, but what about after construction is completed?
After construction, if he's got the driveway up front, he ain't gonna have a problem. But then he'll have to, if we don't get the driveway, we'll have to figure out some kind of parking pad on the rear there that he's gonna have to get somewhere on there and then be able to walk up to the front. It's still gonna be a long way for him.
And this will also help with privacy for the back
Yeah.
as well.
No, I understand that. You don't want to.
Every HPR I've seen like this, they always bake into them general common elements that allow access. I've never seen a HPR plat file that landlocked anybody or didn't provide. I would imagine the limited common elements in an HPR like this would be just pretty much what are around the residences. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
It would be different if they were doing both of them.
We closed the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Close.
are you done asking?
I'm done asking questions. Thank you.
So we'll-
Can I make one more comment?
Are you finishing up on his question?
No, sir.
Okay, well, no, sorry.
Okay.
We reopened it so it could ask.
I understand.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
what I just heard in the question that you asked, though, is that ultimately, there will be access to the alley, but that currently there's issue with staging lumber and materials for the construction, which is not a zoning issue. It's a site management and engineering issue.
Right.
We don't grant variances for temporary issues that relate to being able to ingress and egress.
Right, and I think he's trying to, two birds, one stone, right?
Yeah.
Essentially take care of the front homeowner and provide him access throughout the course of construction, and also not have him to park in the rear and then walk all the way up. Most of the development that I've seen like this, the owners buy both lots and they redevelop the whole.
at the same time. Right?
Yeah.
At the same time, so this is a little trickier.
Well, I've seen the duals before, but again, yeah, if it's a common driveway or a shared driveway, you just have to figure out a way to work around that.
Well, it's commendable that he's being very considerate of the person
Yes.
that's already on the property, and that's a good thing. I always feel like if there is no identified hardship, that's the sine qua non for a variance, and I'm like you, I've been looking to see if there's something we can hang our hat on, and I just don't see a hardship, so.
It's related to an activity, not a feature of the
Not a
property
feature of the
itself.
property, right. So if anybody sees one, I'm all ears and eyes.
No,
You make your motion.
No, I just would personally like to try to find a way to make it work, but I agree with,
I don't think you can,
with
unless you have a
Ross.
joint drive of some type coming off the alley or something.
Right.
Well, I'll make a motion, and before I make it, I'll say I commend the gentleman's considerateness of his neighbor and what he's trying to do, but we can only stretch so far, and if there's just not a hardship associated with the property, our hands are tied. I don't see one, so I'll make a motion that we deny the application. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. These are weird.
That's the only way they can do it. That's the only way they can do it.
All right, let's case 2023-117. This application was filed by Patrick Napier on behalf of the property located at 1200 Phillips. The applicants are seeking a special exception to reduce the street setbacks from 30 feet to 15. This is a multifamily development located in the RM20 zoning district. The planning department has recommended disapproval of the request. Here is a look of the zoning map of this area. You can see there's another multifamily development across the street, and then, so Phillips is the street that's sort of running, I guess, latitudinally, and then you got 12th Avenue running parallel to the interstate down below. So that's 40 downtown. Property is located in North Nashville, and here's a view of what the lot looks like. So it's vacant. And this is the property across the street for some reference. I think this is from the back, so there is an alley to the rear. And then we've got a view of the site plan in front of us here. I believe there are some people wishing to speak in opposition to this request. Is that correct? All right. And so if the applicant would like to come forward at this time, then you'll have 10 minutes, and you can reserve some of that time if you'll please state your name and address whenever you get started. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Patrick Napier, 2002 Richard Jones Road, Fulmer Lucas Engineering. First, thank you for the service that you provide to the city. We appreciate it. So I would like to review very quickly the planning department analysis and their recommendation. The land use policy that they cited is incorrect. The policy for this site is T4 neighborhood evolving. It is not maintenance.
And which one did they cite? They say T4.
They said it was T4 neighborhood maintenance. It is not maintenance. It is T4 neighborhood evolving.
And is that what is attached to our materials? It's highlighted the T4 urban?
Maintenance.
Yes, I did. And then Mr. Napier brought this to my attention earlier. What I will do, Mr. Napier showed me a tool where I can actually, through the GIS mapping database, confirm instead of using the static PDF version of the map. So I can go to that now just to be able to verify for the board, the information regarding the character policy that this property is located within.
I can also provide further evidence that planning cited T4 neighborhood evolving in an SP, which is located at 907 12th Avenue North. They cited T4 neighborhood evolving as the same policy.
I mean, you could look at
shaded in the same color.
So they cited T4 NM, and you say it should be
it's
T4
evolving.
urban?
It's
Urban
T4
neighborhood
evolving, but if you look at the color-coded map, it is evolving on the color-coded map that was provided to us.
Yes.
Where that 1200 Phillips arrow is pointing on what you've sent over.
Okay, so you say they've cited the wrong land use?
Correct.
Okay, and so how does that differ? How does that help your case?
Well, okay, so.
And their big issue, as I see it, their big issue is the setback going from what normally 30 feet for everything else to 15 feet.
That's correct. So there's a few aspects which I believe support our request. First, the current zoning of RM20 is not consistent with T4 neighborhood maintenance or T4 neighborhood evolving. The zoning that is cited as consistent with that land use policy is the alternative district, RM20A. RM20A permits a 0 to 15 foot setback in the UZO. Rather than have us rezone the property to meet that one aspect of the zoning code, we felt is a better use of staff resources for the BZA and planning staff to request this one exception for the one aspect of the property. Two, this neighborhood contains a diverse mixture of uses, a diverse mixture of structure types, and a diverse mixture of current setbacks. They range from the shortest along Phillips to roughly 12 to 15 feet, all the way in excess of 30 feet. So that is representative of both the maintenance and evolving policies in various parts of the city. The zoning code itself also notes that when you have a UZO overlay, that shallower setbacks are also appropriate, which is also something that planning cites for rezones that they've had in the area. So if you're expanding the scope of what we're asking, we feel that the reduced setback to 15 feet fits with the character of the existing structures, uses, and is consistent with either of the policies, whether it be the maintenance or the evolving. And then additionally, having a further setback away from the street does not really create an engaged public realm. When planning reviews zone changes and specific plans, they often encourage in urban policies, especially in the UZO, to bring your structures to the street to create more intimate public realms and to engage sidewalks, to set hard corners and make that architecturally appropriate. If you also look closer with our structures that are immediately to the southwest going away from this site down Phillips, you will notice that the townhome structures actually set an appropriate architectural dimension for the corner, and it gently steps back, starting with the property at 1206 Phillips and then the property at 1210 Phillips. So you have almost a fair curve, like a gentle step back, which is often cited again by planning as an appropriate built environment for an urban policy area.
And you only need the setback along Phillips?
Along Phillips, yes.
From 30 to 15?
15, yes.
Okay. And what's your frontage on Phillips? Looks like it's about 150 feet.
Yes, I can pull up the dimension here. It's roughly approximately 160.
160, okay.
I will also add that this site is entirely accessed by the alleys that run north, south, and east, west, which create a 90-degree corner at the rear corner of the property. I'm happy to field any questions or have any additional discussion.
So just to summarize, your position is the planning department's recommendation just applies the wrong land use policy.
Yes, but if they did apply the neighborhood evolving policy, that's even more supportive of our position. Because when you rezone within neighborhood evolving, often they do not take into account the existing setbacks because they expect additional properties and adjacent properties to eventually redevelop and take advantage of the UZO setbacks, which for this zone district and the alternative zone district, which is what they would support, would be 0 to 15.
Okay. Questions, board members? Okay, you're gonna have 6 minutes, a little over 6 minutes for rebuttal, so, yep. Okay, we'll hear from the opposition, and if there's more than one person speaking, have you coordinated, you have 10 minutes total, not 10 minutes apiece, so. If you can turn on that red button, ma'am, if you'll tell us your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Marcia Jordan. I live at 1208 Ireland Street, just maybe one street down from the Phillips. Is it one street down. And since I'm understanding that it's been approved and he wants a setback or something to move it backwards. I was just wondering if he could do less apartments, maybe not 11, maybe do less apartments. So that, I think it's overcrowded, is my problem. And I think, I seen in pictures, but they're not, I think it's congestion. I think it's too crowded, and they have built a lot of lots around me, and they have put the houses right on top of my fence, and they have torn down my fence. And I just think, I just really think maybe instead of setting it back, but do less apartments.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Courtney Jordan. I live at 1208 Arlen as well, and I've understanding that he's already gotten an approval, and once again, my position is the same. It's a lot of overcrowding, and yes, the neighborhood due to gentrification has changed where it's been single-family homes to them making apartment complexes and commercial property, and it's so in excess. So my thought would be, instead of approving that variance to setback, that he minimize the amount of townhomes that are going to be placed there. Therefore, it reduces the overpopulation, the crowding, the crime. It's just so much taken over and variances of other people's property that is so next and close to it, and no consideration for those that have been established residents. And that's my position, in opposition.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And I have pictures of what the construction looks like right next to me. It's trash everywhere. It's no respect. I don't know, like she said, regentrification. If the neighborhood it's just no respect for the people who live there. It's trash everywhere. It's building houses on top of houses. I have this condo right on my fence. My fence is completely torn. I go out there and they're moving my fence, and I have to tell them, don't move my fence, and then I have a lot of people by me. I got glass in front of my car, and I just think it's too much. Too much is too much.
Thank you. Any questions for the opposition? Okay, thank y'all very much. We're going to let the applicants, got 6 minutes and 10 seconds left. Okay, I was about to say, that's not to say that you have to use 6 minutes and 10 seconds. So, does anybody have any questions for? Okay, no questions. Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and discuss.
I'll just say I always appreciate when folks show up and communicate concerns about things that are occurring in their neighborhood. So thank you all for coming out and participating. But obviously those concerns are not the issue that are before us today.
Right, we don't have any control over how many, if it's zoned for, we can't control the number of buildings that are put on a lot. That's just not within our purview.
Right.
We deal with the setbacks and those kind of things. So there's nothing we could do today to require the applicant to build fewer units or, so I just tell that, so those ladies that are opposing it know that that's something we just couldn't do.
I'm supportive of the request. That what I'm trying to figure out is it's a special exception, but it's for a setback. And so in terms of what I know, we're required to make findings of fact with respect to special exceptions.
So I can maybe jump in here.
Thanks.
So my understanding, right, is that they're bringing this under 1712-35.
Yeah.
And I believe this is under D, and Jody can correct me if I'm wrong, but the special setback regulations for all uses. If they want to get a special exception, they have to provide evidence to the board, as provided in section 1712-060F3, that the proposed building setbacks shall not create an adverse impact on adjacent properties, nor detract from a strong pedestrian-friendly environment. And then if you go to 1712 OSXO F3, there's a requirement that the applicant provide evidence to the board that the proposed building height shall not create an adverse impact on air, light, shadow, or wind velocity patterns due to the configuration of the building relative to the maximum permitted height standards, including height control plane. And its juxtaposition to and with existing structures in the vicinity or approved but not yet built structures. In addition, the applicant shall demonstrate that the proposed building height contributes to and does not detract from a strong pedestrian-friendly streetscape. And that's, yeah. Right.
So, I mean, I
know
think
that's
their
a
evidence
mouthful.
is their pretty detailed site plans. The question just becomes, does the issue that planning has is the 15 feet versus 30 feet. So I view the question for us is that something that detracts from the surrounding neighborhood, lowers property values, or all the things that were listed?
Well, I didn't see, actually, I'm looking at the plans on paper, so I can't zoom in and see very well, but I don't see any addition of trees or porches or anything that creates a better or a good pedestrian environment there. Maybe I'm missing it from the plans, but I don't see any effort made in that respect. And I do have an issue with this, with the setback being so different than the neighboring property, in my opinion. Now, it's not a variance case.
Right.
It's a special exception, so I know it's different, but it doesn't feel right.
Yeah, the only thing is I think that because of this being T4 evolving versus T4 maintenance, that with the idea sort of prospectively thinking, okay, the tip, had planning cited to the correct Nashville Next, then I think, I'm not going to speak for the excellent planning staff, but frankly, I think the recommendation might have come out differently, because I think that it might be that, the anticipation with this is frontage. It is on 12th, right up against I-40, at the end of Phillips and 12th. So I think that's sort of where my mind is on it because if we were thinking about it with respect to the residences that were behind it, and if it were maintenance, I'd feel differently than I do.
Is that plan you just pulled up, is that the?
That's the landscape plan, and I noticed that it reflects on here, street trees, 1 per 20 feet, urban forestry approved. It was the information that I saw that might be responsive to Ms. Karpenick's question.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I guess I'm having trouble with the paper today.
Does that help with where
It does help, yeah, it helps. I still don't like it being so far, I understand your points. I just, we have the contextual street setbacks and all that we try to live by, they're in there for a reason. They're in the code for a reason. So this, it bothers me a bit, but it's a special exception, and I understand your points.
Sounds like it's a close one.
It is a close one.
Because it is. I get what you're saying too, but that special exception standard is always, but you're making, I understand how the contextual setback is important. I guess the question is, does not complying with the contextual setback create the standard being, and I don't know, that's a question that I'm kind of on the fence about it myself.
Oh, they must be having a caucus meeting in D.C. right now and pulling back.
Yeah, I guess we should at least confirm if it's real or.
Have y'all, do you know the height of this? Because, part of the special exception is presenting shadow studies and other stuff. I haven't been able to find the height in those paperwork.
Yeah, because and I think the other question.
They're doing some work on this.
Okay. This is not a case of somebody trying to get out of paying their tag fees. Right.
Or Congress, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I make a motion to open back up for one question?
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. For the applicant?
For the applicant.
Yeah, if you can come up and turn that mic on, you got some questions from Mr. Ransom.
So, just one question. And maybe it's in the site plans, and I just haven't seen it, so if you could point me out to it, but just the proposed height for these dwellings?
I'll have ownership answer the height, because
Okay.
this is a, hey, Click, could you come up?
And if you could state your name and your address.
My name is Clay Tate, address 6624 Hastings Lane, Franklin, Tennessee, 37069.
Thank you.
Let me pull the plans up here. Not prepared.
And Mr. Ransom, to clarify, the height as measured to the top of the roof line and not any sort of protrusion or parapet above the roof line? Is that what the footage and height that you were requesting?
Yeah, I would take it to the, I guess, the ridge at the top of the roof.
Do you have the
But
architectural
if they're
plans?
flat, are they,
Can't get
I don't know if
service.
it's a gable roof or flat. So it's a flat roof, like a roof deck, and you've got stairs that lead up, something along those lines?
Yes.
Yeah, there's an access. Let's see here.
I'll make the assumption it's a main level garage, 2 stories, and then a roof deck?
That's right.
Okay. So, what, 35 feet to the roof deck plus parapet wall and maybe a, I don't know why the word is escaping me, but when you have a stairway that goes up to the top. What? Maybe a bulkhead, I have a different term for it, but. Yeah. I'm more interested in the mass of the structure, if there's some
Right.
walls and other stuff.
Let's see here. This might be it.
And while you guys are looking that up, Joey, I got a question for you, for RM20, but that's into this adjusted use district, I know it goes by stories. Does the T4 change the heights, or does it stick?
No, the land use policy plan has no effect on zoning regulations whatsoever.
I've got the height here. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
Jim. 33 feet, 8 1/4 inches to the roof deck.
The roof deck, okay, I was close, 35. Okay,
Okay, or any further questions?
no, thank
Okay,
you.
We'll close the public hearing and discuss. Thank you.
Well, I understand the neighbors' concerns about the density, but it's just, I guess I'm back on it's a special exception, and usually we do have to approve those if they do meet the requirements, so I don't see anything that doesn't meet the requirements, although I'm not fond of this.
Elizabeth, would you mind putting the landscaping, you had it a second ago, and
Christine, you
I'm
got like
looking at
30
it right now.
plus feet, 15
well,
feet away.
there was another one that actually
okay.
showed the shrubs and what have you.
I thought that was it.
Okay, yes, this one here, if you see the circles around on the site plan on the right,
Yeah.
those indicate trees, and then
Not
there's,
trees there, we just know the trees. Not that it matters much, I'm just kind of curious.
I do show where there's hackberry there now on that, if you see on the site plan on the left is the one that would be removed. And then it says urban forestry approved, which I assume is referring to they're going to work with the urban forester for approval with the types of trees that they're going to replace there. And then I'm looking through these landscaping plans to see if there's any other detail that I could provide. There is one page with a lot of text on it, and of course, at 8.5 by 11, it's really hard to read, but
These
perhaps
items
Mr.
work as well as they used to.
I think that's probably the best level of detail that we can provide as far as what their plan is. And then perhaps the zoning administrator could fill in some more information about the extent to which that plan is sort of mandatory to be complied with versus what might be discretionary once they start working with the urban forester.
Oh, gotcha. The landscape plan, Stephanie and them will have to determine. One thing I noticed on this plan shows street trees. Of course, that may be drafted at the time our sidewalk ordinance required street trees, so I can't enforce that if it's related. Now, they can certainly put street trees in if they choose to, but Metro can no longer make them do so. So I can't speak to that. But as far as the landscape plan itself, you board could say, all right, it's this plan right here. This is the one that better walk out the door. You could do that. But absent that, the urban forester will make sure that they comply with the landscape code.
We've got a good urban forester, so.
Oh, yeah. There will not be hackberries planted here.
Yeah, well, the hackberries, I think I've been pretty clear on that for the last couple of years.
I'm going to bring you some hackberries.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask legal counsel about the standards for the special exception. I believe well, you can tell them better than I can.
Right, I think I did want to clarify in response to the point you raised just briefly, there is additional sort of special language here regarding these kinds of setback requests, and this is under 1712-035, and it's what I read before, but there's that language about you have to provide evidence to the board that there's no adverse impact on adjacent properties, nor does the plan detract from a strong pedestrian-friendly environment. And then there's that reference to the other part of the code, with basically having to show there's no adverse impact on air, light, shadow, wind velocity patterns.
And if they meet those standards, then we're required to approve it? That makes a difference than a variance?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion. I believe that, and I understand the opposition's concern again about the number of units, but that's something we just can't control. I think I'm okay with the 15-foot variance. I think it's still a good plan, and they have a landscape plan, and more importantly, even what I think about those does not matter, because I think they've proven the special exception requirement, so. Which is it's a much easier, in my estimation, to prove than a variance. They don't have to show a hardship, so I'll move that we approve it.
Second.
The special exception. Second, okay. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Would you be willing to accept that, because when they put this, it's a lot of concrete and what have you, there's no green in this area to speak of, because it's going to get cut down, that they have to submit and have approved to the forester a landscape plan?
Sure, I'll consider it my motion so amended. I'm assuming the second would stay in place.
I'll second as long as that condition is something that's permitted for us to do.
Sure. Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. Before we move to the last case, does anybody need to take a break, or do we want to soldier through the last case? I think we have one more, do we not? Oh, that's it. Okay, well, motion to adjourn. Our second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we're done. Well,
What on earth are you trying to do?
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.